David wasn't a hero because he was my brother, but because he did go and help his fellow man. If I hate, they win. Hate divides. So if I can stand up, the brother of a murdered man, and say, let's talk together, let's listen to each other, then that has to have a certain value. I have met people that I would never have come across in the past. So many fantastic people and organisations who are making a difference. Early on in this journey that I've been taking, I was put in touch with my Imam friend Shanawaz. I learn from Shanawaz. We have an understanding between us that we can ask questions of each other's faith, of each other's backgrounds, without causing offence. And this is vital. This is the way that we break down barriers. And it is wonderful to be accompanied by him here with this message of unity, understanding, tolerance.
It's an honour. I really feel that. I found my experience with Mike really inspiring. I mean, really inspiring.
Hard to get questions out.
How do you feel that you've managed to stay?
What was your initial reaction?
We can come together to learn from each other, to be proud of our individual heritages, but also recognise that other people are proud of their heritages and accept that they are proud. We stand against terrorism. We can start something here today that can really make a difference. All I can say is take my hand and be my friend. Unity, tolerance and understanding are such important aspects. We are stronger because of it. I hope that you will forgive me reading this talk. I find public speaking difficult, even to this day and many hundreds of presentations later. The latest hate crime statistics have been released, and I am afraid it is very sad reading. The stats have in many cases gone through the roof. We are living in a time of turmoil, change, fear, and hate. The voices of hate and the politics of division are loud. All around us, polarising talk and hate speech is becoming increasingly normal. We are seeing communities being increasingly distant from one another as more and more radical language and on occasions actions become the daily norm. In many respects, the echoes of history, both social and political, are resounding in our halls of power, in our communities, in our streets, in our homes. So what can we do about it? If I may, I'd like to tell you a little of Global Acts of Unity, what we do, why we do, and how. As you heard, in March 2013, my brother David was a humanitarian worker who was kidnapped while on a mission in Syria. He and his colleague Federico were taken after visiting a refugee camp near Idlib. David, along with other hostages, were held for months on end, all the while being tortured beaten and maltreated, and then publicly beheaded by ISIS. A video of their murders was broadcast and put out for the world to see. My brother died on the 13th of September 2014. All through the 18 months of my brother's captivity, I was the liaison between the NGO acted that David worked for, our government agencies, and my family. Just a few days before my brother's murder, I had moved most of my family to my home. 13th September 2014. It was 3 minutes past 11 at night when I received a phone call from my team in London, telling me that my brother was no longer with us. I wanted to run away and hide from telling my family, but I couldn't let it be a stranger. I gathered my family together. I took my mum's hands and told her her son could no longer be hurt anymore. The anger, the frustration, the hatred that I felt inside, thank you, was stronger than any feelings I have ever experienced ever before. If someone had flicked a switch and the people responsible for my murder, the murder of my brother were at my feet, I would have murdered them. The strength of that feeling shocked me. This was all in the first minutes of telling my family. We were all in tears. My mum was sobbing. The tears were streaming down my face. So I asked myself, why would they murder my brother? Was it because he was Caucasian? No. Was it because he was Christian? No. Was it because he was humanitarian? No. And then I had a real epiphany moment. I realized that it was because of hate. They, ISIS, wanted me to stand up and spread hate, to point a finger at Islam and say, your faith, your people murdered my brother. I felt that I was miles up in the air, and I could see the whole of our country, the whole of the United Kingdom. I could see how ISIS wanted me to push our communities apart, and how my words of hate would have impacted Muslim and non-Muslim alike. If I had chosen a path of hate, I would have been doing ISIS's job for them. And then I had a second epiphany moment when I realized that all acts of terrorism, extremism, are about the spread of hate. These terrorists and extremists want us to hate each other, to divide us, to sow division and discord. And if we hate, they've won. I was faced with a choice. Do I give in and spread hate like they wanted me to do? or do I try to do something different, something better? Now, my brother was in many respects not the best of men. He was argumentative, he was stubborn, he was opinionated. He, like myself, like all people, made mistakes. He made bad decisions, he did less than honourable deeds. He did not always do what was right. He was not a man to be put up on a pedestal. However, as a humanitarian, he went to places of danger to help his fellow man regardless of colour, culture, faith or politics. And that made him special. That is what made my brother a hero, my hero. As I said, I faced a choice. Should I act or try to do something different? Now, when David and I were kids, my parents were in the forces. My dad was in the RAF. We moved all over the world and lived in many different countries. We experienced many different cultures and came into contact with many different faiths. Mum and Dad taught David and myself to respect all, no matter your station in life, whether you be the Queen of Sheba or a beggar in the street. We were taught to learn from different cultures and faiths and to ask questions, to learn from others. It was those foundations laid by our parents that took David into humanitarian work and myself into Global Acts of Unity. I knew the actions of my brother's murderers were not about Islam. It was about hate. From my little knowledge of Islam, I knew the faith was not about hatred, terror, and the fear like ISIS wished to portray. It's the faith of compassion, of humanity, of love. Even in those first few minutes after telling my family, I harboured no ill towards Islam. I chose to stand against the hate of ISIS and the division and discord they sought, and still seek to do so in our communities. I rejected all hatred of the jihadists, of the far right, and all extremism, and all terrorism. Now, I'm an ex-serviceman. I served, like my brother and my father, in the Royal Air Force. All my family, going back generations upon generations, served in the armed forces. It is in our DNA to stand up and fight. Fight for our people, fight for our country. Now, there's many things wrong with our country, but there's many things right. Our country is made up of a tapestry of diverse cultures, faiths, and we need colours, and we need that diversity to learn, to grow, to understand, to evolve as a society. So what could I do against the hate? I was too old and fat to serve again in the armed forces. I have health issues which stopped me from doing humanitarian work, which was, to be honest, my first choice. So I chose, much against my own desires, to speak publicly. I made statements to the press, went on television in an effort to try and stem the tide of hate that was flooding our country. I tried to speak to as many people as possible, I spoke to politicians, cultural leaders, faith leaders, basically anyone and anywhere I could. As you saw, I even spoke to the Pope. So how did it all begin? 6 weeks after the murder of my brother, I was invited by the Oxford Foundation to a multi-faith event down in Birmingham. The organiser wanted me to speak publicly, and to be honest, it was not something that I relished. Public speaking, even to this day, as you can see by the shaking hands and the shaking knees, scares the living daylights out of me. To make a long story short, I spoke for 90 seconds. I cannot, to this day, tell you what I said. All I can remember is shaking with nerves and my knees knocking. It was in many respects like talking to the church choir. It was a very friendly audience, full of people who already understood the spread of hatred and the need for unity. I was not going to make change happen there. In the meet and the greet after the event, I was approached by a gentleman who introduced himself and asked me what I was doing the following day. It turned out he was the head teacher at a school in Birmingham. He invited me to his school. In my head, I'm going, why does he want me to come to his school? Meet a few students, meet a few teachers, show me around the building, eat a school dinner, God forbid. So, long story short again, we agreed to meet. And the following day, we met outside his school, and he walked me into the assembly hall. There sat all the school students, all the teachers, and all the support staff. Some 1,400 people. The head teacher escorted me to the lectern in front of everybody and introduced me as the guest speaker, to my absolute horror and complete surprise. Thank goodness for the lectern, like now. It gave me something to hold on to as my whole body was shaking with nerves. Again, I had nothing prepared, so I basically opened my heart and I spoke about my family, what we had gone through, and about how the terrorists and extremists wanted us to hate each other. And if we gave them that hate, they had won. After my talk, there were hundreds of students who came up to shake my hand, to give me a hug, and many promising not to hate. I could see that they understood what I was trying to show them. It was at this moment that I realized that these young men and women were going to be our future. This was going to be my prime audience. It was on that day that the campaign against hatred, division, and discord came into being, although it was the following year before it was christened Global Acts of Unity. Under the Global Acts of Unity banner, I have travelled all over the United Kingdom and abroad to speak about the need for tolerance, unity, understanding, and compassion between our different communities. To date, Global Acts of Unity has spoken with over 100,000 people. in churches, mosques and other places of worship, schools, colleges, universities and all sorts of organisations. GAU has recently been awarded a charitable status, and at this present time my colleagues are working on planning further tours in many areas of our country and the United Kingdom, and of course fundraising to enable those tours. In 2018, I was awarded an LBE for my work against radicalisation and terrorism. This came as a very, very big surprise, and I still don't quite believe it. I'm still waiting on a letter from the palace saying, look, Mike, we're very sorry. Is it a good, well done badge from Tesco's? Give us our LBE back. I was, of course, delighted to receive the honour. However, the honour does not go to one person alone. The award goes to all those who have worked with me over the past 8 years. It goes to the teachers, and most importantly, it goes to the students, especially those who have chosen a path away and rejected hatred. So why youth as a prime audience? Well, it's for me the realisation that talking to older generations, especially my own, was not going to work. In general, we have built so many walls around ourselves that it is difficult in the extreme to break them down. The future does not hold that excitement and passion that the youth have. Also, it was the realisation that the hatred and division of the extremists is aimed at our youth. They, the extremists, want them to commit hate crimes, hate speech, and if pushed in the right way, some of our more disenfranchised youth will oblige and will commit such acts. It is natural for our youth to be angry at life, at their parents, at society. When I was a lad, although my only plan was to join the Royal Air Force and work on aircraft like my dad, me and my mates, around the age of 14, we messed around with the idea of communism. True communism was the only way for the future, the world, to answer its problems. I was angry at myself, at my parents, at my school, at everything. We all were at one stage in life. The difference now is there are people out there who are looking for our angry young men and women to manipulate our youth, to steer them down paths of crime or extremism and even terrorism. These groomers, and I use the word deliberately, groom them to aim to produce young men and women who will speak or act in extremist hate or even terrorist acts. So it is so important that we reach these young men and women and we empower them to see that the hatred of the extremism and terrorism can never be the answer. The GAU presentation tells a story of what happened to my brother, that happened to my family. The second half of the presentation is all about the rejection of hatred in all its forms. We try to encourage our youth to see the truth of hatred and see through the extremist narrative. I never say don't hate. Hatred is a natural feeling, and one, like love, we cannot stop. However, acting on hate is a choice. If we can empower our youth to walk away from a point of hatred, to do something better, we have won. I asked them to give the postie in the street a smile. Ask the poor girl in the Tesco's till how her day's going. I tried to show hatred only destroys, divides, and acts like a cancer in our communities and society. I just tried to show that kindness can do so much and in so many different ways. Research has shown that doing an act of kindness releases endorphins in the brain. At every school that GAU visit, we receive reports of how the atmosphere of kindness is more pronounced once we have left the school. I said right at the beginning, a global acts of unity, if we could help one person take a path away from words or actions of hate, we had won. GAU has dozens of letters, messages from students to teachers, police, prevent, parents, students themselves, describing how a better path has been taken after hearing the GAU presentation. For example, I was at a school in Portsmouth way back in the beginning. At the school where I was giving the presentation, in the audience was a troubled young man with a troubled life. He was absent from school 80% of the time. He had gang problems of petty crime, drugs and alcohol issues. He was on the prevent radar for supporting the far right. He was, to be honest, going to prison. I did not know of all these issues or even the young man himself. He was just in the audience. After the presentation, he went, it always gets me, he went home and told his single mum about the presentation. The following day, he went to school. The following day, he went to school, and every day after he went to school, he put away his gang problems, his drink problems, his drug problems, his hate problems. He turned his life around. When I heard from him, he was at university studying. He is now a positive influence in his community. He volunteers at a youth group. Now, he did this, not Global Acts of Unity. He made the changes. He rejected the hatred and the poison that was in his life. Global Acts of Unity was just a very tiny part in his journey. Much later, it was about 18 months later that I received the first letter from his mum telling me of his journey. Made me cry then, made me cry now. So when the outlook is so gloomy, and I said the politics of hate and the politics of division and the voices of hate are loud. Why am I so positive in my outlook for the future? Where it comes down to the everyday acts of kindness that we as faith leaders, cultural leaders, community leaders can inspire in our youth. If we can promote the role of kindness in our society, it will be better for us all. Look at the stories of kindness that came around about the lockdowns. We live in a loving, caring society. However, we can, by our own actions, make the world a kinder place to live in. Our youth are leading the way, and it is in our role to inspire those youth to lead by example and recognise our leaders of tomorrow. We'll now watch a short film that we put together on the effects of kindness. Please enjoy.
You still here?
I'm doing my tie, Dad.
You know what time it is?
How we act is a series of choices.
You gonna put some shoes on?
Pop, Dad.
No matter how small it might seem, every one of us can spread the power of human kindness. Offer the hand of friendship and make a change. We can all create belonging.
You come in?
Challenge hate with love.
We have to reject that hate and stand together for unity. So what does unity mean to you?
Inspire movements and bridge divides. You have the power to stand for unity, because every gesture, every look, every word is your chance to change the world. Take it, be the change.
Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your patience and listening to my talk. I hope I have done honour of this annual lecture justice. I shall now open up to any questions. Thank you.